Good day and thank you for watching. This is the Vuyo show where we have global conversations with global guests and, of course, sharing global information. For our global news segment today, we share more about the civil war in Sudan, the storm in Dubai, and the potential ban of TikTok in the USA. My name is Vuyo. Let's get straight into it. This past week marked 1 year of what the Guardian reports as one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. And this is happening in the African continent in a country called Sudan, where civil war between two rival factions of the military government of Sudan, the Sudanese armed forces under Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the paramilitary rapid support forces under Meti began during Ramadan in the month of April 2023. And according to CNN, the country is at the brink of collapse and starvation. The country is facing unprecedented humanitarian crisis that has been largely ignored by the rest of the world, which is why we are bringing this report to you today. The situation in Sudan is dire, with over 8.4 million people, including 2 million children under the age of 5, are forced to flee their homes in the wake of the conflict. And the UN High Commissioner of the Human Rights, Volker Turk, warned in a statement on Monday of a further escalation of violence in Sudan, and with the statement saying, as the parties to the conflict arm civilians and more armed groups join the fight. And since the start of the civil war, thousands of people, thousands of homes, schools, hospitals, and vital civilian structures have been destroyed, plunging the country into a severe humanitarian crisis and creating the world's largest displacement crisis. Of course, the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights had mentioned. Now we're looking at nearly 18 million people who are facing acute food insecurity. We are looking at 14 million of them being children, and over 70% of hospitals are no longer functional amid a rise in infectious diseases. This is something that I think is absolutely heart-wrenching. Now let's have a look at what a report from Democracy Now! Stated on this story. Have a look.
More than 8.6 million people have been driven from their homes, creating the world's largest displacement crisis. A new report by the International Organization for Migration has found 20,000 people are forced to flee their homes in Sudan every day, half of them children. The crisis has been compounded by food insecurity, with the World Food Programme recently warning Sudan's facing the world's largest hunger crisis. The number of Sudanese facing emergency levels of hunger, one stage before famine, has more than tripled in a year to almost 5 million, according to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, a UN-backed index. Save the Children has warned that 230,000 children, pregnant women, and newborn mothers could die of malnutrition in the coming months. Meanwhile, Sudan's health system has collapsed, allowing outbreaks of diseases, including measles and cholera.
Now, for me, one of the worst displacements and yet one of the most ignored. I find it so strange that there's no uproar about this crisis in the social world. Understandably, the fact that there's so much already happening with all these wars around the world and these heart-wrenching experiences, and the numbers are so high. I mean, we are looking at more than 9 million people who are now displaced. And my only question is, where are those people now? Where have those people flown to? Why we're not talking about this enough. And with so little attention brought on the story, and I'm just wishing that the rest of the world could hear about it and know about it so they can come to help. We're looking at over 230,000 children that could die from this situation. I've got a little bit more from the Sudanese scholar at McGill University, Khaled Mustafa Magdani, who has a little bit more to share about the direness of this devastation.
I think that where we stand is an unbelievable kind of what the Doctors Without Borders have called a failure of humanity. I think that there are very few crises in the world historically, including in Africa, where there's been such an acceleration in just 1 year of the kind of devastation that you just itemized. 9 million displaced internally, over 1 million across the borders, the 7 borders of Sudan, mostly in Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan, and the complete destruction of the infrastructure. In addition to that, in December of last year, something occurred that has accelerated the famine, basically, not just food insecurity, but the expansion of the famine, and that is the attack on the Jazeera state in central Sudan, which really produces over 60% of the agricultural products of the country. In addition to that, of course, there are 70% of the hospitals that are destroyed. The educational system has completely collapsed. And so the acceleration of this kind of devastation, I don't think we've seen since perhaps maybe the genocide in Rwanda. And I think that compounding that for those of us, of course, concerned about the situation is the lack of attention to the conflict. Of course, eyes are elsewhere, but that has been a really problematic aspect of the important, but once again, we have to really bring these regional actors into play. The United States, as you know, has finally appointed a special envoy to Sudan, who has, interestingly enough, reiterated much of what I'm saying, and that is that there needs to be a coordination among the regional actors, the ending of arms supplies by certain actors to the different warring parties, and interestingly enough, he has also emphasized the importance of taking civil society seriously. And I would like to also mention that, and this is very key, that he has also mentioned, as the majority of Sudanese have mentioned, despite the severity of this conflict, there is only one solution and only one interest on the part of the majority of Sudanese, 99% of Sudanese, and that is the restoration of full civilian democracy. I know it's counterintuitive. It seems difficult at this stage to think a post-war in Sudan, but there is, I think, that even if the American envoy has recognized, as I've said in this program a couple of times, that because of the lack of constituency, the lack of legitimacy, the kind of venal, kind of instrumental, self-interested political and economic objectives of these two warring parties, there is absolutely no other way to resolve this conflict except to support the vast majority of the civilian population and Sudanese inside and outside, and to continue what we call the objectives of what Sudanese call al-Thawra al-Majida, the glorious revolution. That is really the only solution, and this is what even the U.S. envoy has reiterated, and I would argue primarily because he's been talking to Sudanese.
Now, whatever the situation or the cause of this crisis or the reason of this crisis is, it is extremely, once again, heart-wrenching, and I'm hoping that there would be peace in the country of Sudan. Let's go to the next story. Now, Dubai is one of the countries around the world that has the best PR. When we think of Dubai, we think of luxury, we think of glam, we think of all good things and yachts and parties and just fabulosity. But most recently, Dubai faced what was one of the biggest storms that took place in the country, and it's, of course, recent unexpected storm. And on April 16th, that is, when heavy rains caused floods in the United Arab Emirates, also known as Dubai, affected cities mainly Dubai and Sharjah and the Northern Emirates, and different areas of the Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah cities. According to the Emirati National Center of Meteorology, this was the country's heaviest rainfall recorded in 75 years. The floods in the Emirates were part of the Greater Persian Gulf floods. And someone who was living in Dubai mentioned the statement that it felt like it was midnight in the middle of the afternoon. Another said that the mall was flooded and ceilings were collapsing. And of course, the city's top attraction struggled to handle the influx of water, which was happening at the time. And we were told to leave by the metro and was shut. The metro was shut and the taxis were not running. A statement once again made by someone who was part of this devastation and the situation. One said, we were stranded, had nowhere to sleep in the mall. We were stranded rather and had had to sleep in the mall lobby overnight. Now, the UAE's president, Sheikh Mohammed bin Nayar, issued a public order for authorities are quickly working on studying the condition of infrastructure throughout the UAE, and of course, we're limiting the damages caused. And government of employees in this crisis have been told to work from home until the end of the week, while private firms have been encouraged to do the same. Schools across the country had been shuttered, and of course, the death toll has been reported to just being one person, an elderly man who died when his vehicle was swept away at Ras Al Khaimah, according to local media. And some of the worst disruption, of course, has been to the Dubai International Airport, which is the second largest airport and busiest airport in the world. And some of the worst destruction has, of course, been at the Dubai International Airport, which is the world's second busiest airport. And I mean, we saw the clips of the flights trying to land with just flood of water everywhere. And at the airport, there was practically, someone had mentioned that they were practically crushed in a stampede as hundreds of desperate people were fighting for a seat on the coach. Now, once they eventually reached Dubai International Airport, there was no better. A member of the public had said, we asked, can we have water? Can we have food? But nothing. There was nothing here. People are really in a bad way. Many reports stated that the storm, of course, has been caused by cloud seeding. The question is, what is cloud seeding and how did it cause the flood? I've got, of course, a little bit of a description of what this is, and I'm going to take you to someone else who might explain this a little bit further. Cloud seeding, of course, involves the manipulation of existing clouds to help produce more rain. And this can be done by using aircraft to drop small particles into the clouds, and water vapor can then condense more easily and turn into rain. This technique has been around for decades, and the UAE has used it in the recent years to help address the water shortage. I can try to explain this the best way that I can, but I'll let this video explain it to you in detail. Let's take a look at this video from Dynamic Earth Learning to learn.
How does cloud seeding work? Cloud seeding technology allows humans to manipulate the structure of clouds by adding condensation nuclei into the clouds. By employing the cloud seeding technique, scientists can modify the weather accordingly. Cloud seeding is also called rainmaking. A scientist who studies weather and other atmospheric phenomena is called a meteorologist. Meteorologists often use drones, rockets, and rain dispersal aircraft to introduce tiny solid particles into the atmosphere. Ground-based cannons and generators can also be used to shoot condensation nuclei into the atmosphere. The water crystals forming clouds are highly attracted to those solid particles because they have a similar structure. Once attached to the condensation nuclei, the water crystals become dense. This causes gravity to pull them back to the surface of the Earth. Cloud seeding thus increases the chances of precipitation. Cloud seeding methods. Clouds can be seeded using three methods. 1. Static cloud seeding. The static seeding method involves the addition of chemical compounds such as silver iodide onto clouds. Since silver iodide particles have an ice-like structure, the water crystals can easily cling onto the particles. This process makes rain clouds more effective when it comes to dispensing water. The static cloud seeding technique is one of the most commonly used methods. 2. Dynamic cloud seeding. The dynamic cloud seeding technique requires more silver iodide than the static method. It greatly enhances the movement of vertical air currents in the clouds. This, in turn, causes more water crystals to stick onto the silver iodide particles. This method is, however, not as reliable compared to static cloud seeding since it relies on a series of events. 3. Hygroscopic cloud seeding. In this method, scientists spread hygroscopic salts onto rain clouds. A hygroscopic salt is any type of salt that can absorb moisture from the atmosphere. Sodium chloride is a good example of a hygroscopic salt. As the salt crystals take in more water, they increase in size and also become heavier. Consequently, they will fall back to the ground as precipitation. The salt particles can be added into clouds through specialized explosive devices and flares attached to aircraft wings. History of cloud seeding. Experiments on cloud seeding were first done in 1946 by an American meteorologist and chemist called Vincent Joseph Schaefer. Vincent J. Schaefer seeded clouds by dropping dry ice, solid carbon dioxide onto clouds. This led to the formation of human-made snow. The use of silver iodide in cloud seeding was introduced by Bernard Vonnegut, an American atmospheric scientist. Cloud seeding became popular over the years and was even used by the United States during the Vietnam War. Currently, countries around the world use different cloud seeding methods to create precipitation. Advantages and disadvantages of cloud seeding. Seeding clouds using chemical substances can impact the environment in various ways. Advantages of cloud seeding. Creates more rain. The primary reason for seeding clouds is to create rain. As such, this rain-making technique can help stimulate rain clouds to produce more rain. Rain improves crop productivity and can also increase vegetation cover in an area. This method can improve rainfall quantity in areas with minimal rainfall. Cloud seeding can regulate atmospheric conditions. Cloud seeding has been used in different parts of the United States to modify weather conditions. For example, scientists are now able to reduce the size of hailstones during thunderstorms to prevent the destruction of property. Some countries also use this technique to prevent the formation of fog, thereby preventing aviation accidents. Cloud seeding has also been used to prevent flooding in countries such as Indonesia. Reduces the impact of drought. Through cloud seeding, meteorologists can mitigate the effects of drought by enhancing rain-drought-prone areas. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, and other countries have greatly benefited from cloud seeding. Scientific data shows that cloud seeding can increase rainfall by up to 35%. However, this may vary depending on the atmospheric conditions. Disadvantages of cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is potentially harmful to the environment. Some of the chemical compounds used in cloud seeding can impact various aspects of the environment. For example, silver iodide can affect human health and may also alter marine ecosystems. As such, meteorologists are working on finding eco-friendly condensation nuclei. Expensive. Seeding clouds is quite costly. A lot of resources are needed to formulate the chemicals used in cloud injection. Additionally, the procedures associated with this process are equally costly. Cloud seeding cannot work in the absence of clouds. Cloud seeding technology does not lead to the formation of clouds. Instead, the particulates introduced into the atmosphere cling to the already existing water crystals. This means the technique cannot work when there are no clouds in the atmosphere. Unpredictable weather patterns. Many experts warn that cloud seeding could cause severe changes in weather patterns. Areas that often receive minimal rain are likely to get flooded if cloud seeding is not done correctly. Cloud seeding has a lot of potential. Seeding clouds using silver iodide, potassium iodide, and solid carbon dioxide can improve precipitation. This technique has allowed scientists to control weather conditions in different regions. Nonetheless, some of the chemical substances used during the cloud seeding process are not good for
More. Now, while others believe that cloud seeding might be the cause, some did not. And in an interview with BBC, Richard Allen, who's a professor in climate science at the University of Reading, attributed this to warming climate as the cause, as he explained that the intensity of the rain was record-breaking. But this is consistent with warming climate. With more moisture available to fuel storms and make heavy rainfall events, and associated flooding is progressively more potent. Is it cloud seeding? Is it not? We do not know, but we hope that the people of Dubai, of course, will continue being safe, and those who are stuck in the country are able to return back home to safety as well. And according to an online publication called ARY News, it is alleged that it is now illegal to post storm pictures online in Dubai. According to the Interior Ministry, posting negative images or rumors about the recent flooding could be punished under the country's cybercrime laws. And the International Business Times reported that damaging the country's reputation online is a punishable imprisonment, and you could be fined up to 1 million Emirati dirhams. And I do, however, understand, the desire for people to record such experiences. I remember when there was a mini earthquake here in New York, the first thing I thought of doing and I wanted to do was to take out my phone and record the situation, right? So I wonder how they'll be able to, of course, manage the control of how people are posting and how many times they get to post online, because that's something that's quite difficult to get to do. But let's go to our next next story, of course, TikTok might be banned in the USA. The House, of course, passed the legislation on Saturday that would ban TikTok in the United States if the popular social media platform, China's based owner, doesn't sell its stake within a year. But of course, don't expect the app to go away anytime soon. And this will mark the first time ever Congress has passed legislation aimed at shutting down a social media platform, something the U.S. government officials have long criticized other nations for doing. Lawmakers from both parties say TikTok is a national security risk. Fearing Chinese government officials could ask the app for data on millions of Americans or push the service to amplify disinformation ahead of the November election. Now, TikTok has long said that the Chinese government has never asked for America's data, and if it were to be asked, the company would simply refuse to comply. But under Chinese national intelligence laws, TikTok would be legally bound to hand over information on the American users of the app. Looking forward to seeing how this story unfolds. The question now is, what will happen if Biden signs the bill? And an immediate legal battle, of course, would take place if that would happen. And the NPR has confirmed that TikTok is readying a federal lawsuit seeking to block this particular law. Now, in previous attempts to shut a TikTok in the USA had not been successful. 3 separate federal district judges have blocked efforts to ban TikTok, and 2 courts during the Trump administration, one more recently in Montana. The U.S. District Court Judge Wendy Biddlestone in Philadelphia found in 2020 that TikTok's national security threat is phrased in the hypothetical. Now, in late 2023, the U.S. District Court Judge Donald Morley in Missoula said that a crusade by officials in Montana to block TikTok within the state's borders had a pervasive undertone of anti-Chinese sentiment. Who would buy TikTok then if it's meant to be sold or it's supposed to be sold? The question is, now since the app is one of the largest and most valuable social media platforms in the world, analysts estimate that it would likely cost more than $100 billion. Let me say that again. $100 billion. That's a lot of money. I mean, I was stumbling even saying it. That means only that the biggest technology companies like Meta, Microsoft, Google, or Amazon would be able to afford the purchase of the app, though, of course, the Biden administration's antitrust enforcers would likely challenge such an acquisition. Now, a few things, of course, that the bill would make different is that, for starters, there would be some substantive changes, rather. Instead of course, of a 6-month deadline, TikTok would have roughly 9 months to make this particular, for the decision to be implemented, and that deadline could be extended by the White House for a period of 90 days. And if President Joe Biden determines there has been progress on the sale. And some have recently, of course, spoken about the importance of creatives diversifying the platforms that they share their content and create content on. Because in the case that this ban is implemented, that means that all the people and the individuals and the creators who get to create content on TikTok and monetize in that capacity will not be able to do so, at least in the USA. We, of course, will be following up on the story and sharing it with you as it goes along. And we, of course, would like to, in either case, invite you to follow us on social media. We are at The Vuyo Show across all social media platforms. Visit our website, thevuyoshow.com. And, of course, stay tuned for this and so much more. Global conversations, global guests, and global information is what we are sharing with you on the show. I am Vuyo Jamoda. Goodbye, and see you next time. Cheers for now.